Welcome to On Second Thought. This podcast is your window into the ideas and innovations reshaping our world.
Hi everyone, welcome to an episode of On Second Thought, a podcast where we talk to builders, creators, writers, innovators who are shaping a better and more nuanced positive future. On that note, I have Shephali Bhatt with me today. It is also the first episode that I'm doing myself.
Wow.
So I couldn't be more excited to have you. Shephali Bhatt is an internet technology reporter and researcher. She's worked at the Hindustan Times, the Times of India, the Economic Times, Mint, and now she also, she's an independent writer, but she has her column with the Mint, which if you're anyone on the internet, you would have come across her writing.
I hope so.
I also want to share a very internet lore of how we discovered each other, or rather how you discovered me. I always knew, and I'm a big fan of your writing. There is a writer and strategy director called Ben Dietz, who has a Substack newsletter called Digest of Daily Developments. And I am a big fan. I had written a comment, and then that's how we connected. So it's very full circle that we're now discussing everything internet culture.
Yeah, I remember this because it showed your full name.
Yes.
And so I could figure that this sounds like an Indian name, and I
Yeah.
did not expect him to kind of have that kind of a readership. And then I realized that we were already connected on LinkedIn.
Because I'm a fan.
And so I reached out to you on message saying it was nice to. Yeah, that was a nice meet cute.
Exactly.
I'd totally forgotten about that.
Exactly. I was reflecting today on, how a conversation, how I was able to connect with you rather,
Yeah.
and build any sort of equation. And I was like, that's a really nice internet lore and
Yes,
set
love
up
it.
for what we want to discuss.
Yep.
So there is a bunch that I want to get into. We will cover internet culture, we'll cover AI, we'll cover the chaos of it all. We'll cover the nuances of media too. Talk about like the lack or the gap or again the nuances of female representation in it. And then we'll see how the conversation, where it sort of takes us. So just to begin with, I wanted to ask you, where do you think we are in the Indian internet culture space?
I think we are at that space where there is chaos, but this chaos is not a ladder.
Right.
And if it is a ladder, then basically someone's just basically stomped on it so hard that the ladder has been flattened now. And so you're all walking on that ladder, but you're basically not climbing up.
Right.
That's how I visualize the internet at this point. I keep saying this in a lot of conversations with people that I don't enjoy being on the internet.
Yeah.
And just because I need to keep writing about the internet because I feel like it is something that I understand to a certain extent, and I find meaning in it, and I feel like I can bring some value add to it. I feel it is imperative for me to stay away from the internet also as much as possible, because otherwise I will lose whatever little sanity I have left.
Yeah.
Because you open any app and it is chaos. And then, if we were to look at the current context in at the time that which we are recording, there is just so much misinformation on every social media platform and social media and messaging platform right this moment. That there is no better word that sums up the internet right now than chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how I see it.
And when you say that, but you also mirror it with the amount we are on the internet. Like, if you even just take, I was going to ask you a bit later, but like on this short form boom of reels and shorts for us, not even TikTok, that entire universe hasn't been opened up. And I'm talking specifically of Indian internet, like how do you sort of build a mirror to that in the sense of, yes, there's a lot of misinformation and, but we're also spending so much time on it, like in principle to get entertained or to not really pay attention to what's happening. So how has that kind of, in your understanding, warped us a bit of like the reality?
Yeah, you're right. I think we need to escape from the reality, and so we find our escape on the internet. But then internet is kind of becoming our reality,
yeah.
and it's just a very um, fractured reality. It just really um, yeah, you've actually got me thinking about this. We do go to the phone because we want to escape our reality, but the phone is also kind of a mirror to our reality.
Yeah.
So there really is no escape
From it,
we're
exactly.
thinking that we're trying to find an escape, but an escape really would be if we actually left the phone altogether.
Yeah.
And that just, unless you are privileged enough to actually take that call, because the internet is also work now in so many ways.
Yeah.
And so to be able to, like how people go for these detox retreats, right? Like that's an absolute privilege to be able to do that, because
Yeah.
so many people just cannot afford not to be on the internet right now.
Yeah.
It's such an integral part of their work life.
Yeah.
I really don't know what's the way out, except just the burning awareness of the fact that it is a trap, and we need to make sure that we're aware of that and we don't fall into that trap.
Yeah.
And we just skirt around it just to be able to get whatever it is that we need from it.
Yeah.
We need to make the internet work for ourselves instead of working for the internet.
Exactly.
So far, I think in our heads, we think that we are trying to escape into it, but we are getting sucked into it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's also the thread of, every creator has this thing of the algorithm, right? Like it's like this god of, am I understanding the algorithm? Am I creating for the algorithm? What do I need to do now? I'm not a creator, but I work with brands, right? And so now the only thing I say is you don't know. There's no answer to it. I think earlier there were some principles that you could say, but now, like you said, it's chaos. You can't understand, but people really want to create for that rather than sometimes the audience or looking at those metrics that matter, right? So it's kind of interesting because the second question was, is everyone just a creator now on the internet? Because any person that we talk to as well, let's say from a business brand point of view, it's like, oh, you have to put your face out there. People want to see the everyday hustle of building a brand or starting a company or creating a podcast. Like everyone wants to see that process and journey. So in that, you have to put yourself out there. And if it's not on the internet, did it even happen? So again, what is your sort of take on that? How have you seen that evolution happen from early days to now?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more faces in broadcast journalism. It's called talking heads, and in print, it's called voices or sources that you attribute certain voices to. I'm actually working on a story on similar lines about how if you go to a cafe in Bandra, you'll see a lot of people, and somehow you'll get this feeling that these people look familiar, and then you realize it's probably because I've seen them in some or the other reel at some point.
Right.
So the charm of, how there was this song in this is a 90s song, Mere Khwabon Mein Jo Aaye from DDLJ. And there's this line in it, kaisa hai, kaun hai, wo jaane kahan hai.
Yeah.
The kaisa hai part is also about not just the nature of it, but I don't know what he looks like. Ek undekha anjana sa. That's how the prelude to the song begins with those lines that Kajol is telling her mother's character that's played by Farida Jalal. And that was pretty much what we grew up on, the undekha part of it all, which is not the case anymore. Now faces have lost that currency that they used to have, even though we say that face has the real currency in this world. So audio doesn't work as well as it used to at some point, probably during the pandemic, because a lot of people were homebound, doing a lot of chores, needed some audio input and not too much visual input to be distracted. But now everybody seems to be going towards video and then chopping out 15-second trailers and teasers that are sort of being rolled out on Shorts and Instagram, in the hope that at least a percentage of the people who are drawn in through those 15-seconders will go and watch the entire conversation. But in all of this, what has started to happen is that we are now exposed to just too many faces.
Yeah.
If you think about an average human being, even in metros, right, even in tier 1 cities like ours, before the content boom, how many faces did you know? How many faces did you see on a daily basis?
Right.
And just about, if you think of any of these ensemble movies, right, or ensemble character dramas,
Yeah.
how many characters stayed with you? Just one or two characters that stuck out for you, right?
Right.
You didn't remember the entire cast name and their backstory unless you were someone who was obsessed with that show.
Right.
But now you just have so many of these shows, you have so many such movies, and you have so many more people who are online, because it's that there are tools that have made it easier for you to actually just look into a camera and just put a piece of you out there in the world. But what happens to you on the other end, who's consuming all of these faces?
Yeah.
Are you as excited to see a new face now as you were, say, 5 to 8 years ago? Not even longer than a decade ago. You tell me.
Yeah, and like also, what does it even mean? I feel at times it's a prerequisite. If I'm meeting somebody, of like, oh, I've seen you here, I've like, so it's your mind does all this mental math, removing the equation of, oh, I'm meeting somebody new for the first time.
There
like,
you go. Thank you. I'm speaking to you for this story.
Yeah,
the charm of just meeting someone new is gone, because you've seen their pictures, you've seen their animated pictures, because that's all it takes to create a reel with you as a main character, right? Just a little bit of you,
and just like
this
all this information you have of another person. I was thinking about it now when I meet someone and I don't like it about myself, but my mind always does this. If I know or if I've seen it, like I'll use it as a talking point, right? Oh, hi, like, oh yeah, I've seen this, or like, because I think that's just become the new way. And it's like, instead of just saying, oh, hi, nice to meet you, and like that feels and falls flat.
Yeah, like when did you last ask somebody, what have you been up to? You already know what they're up to.
What they're up to. And it's also like, in a way, I've seen it like gets reflected positively. If I meet you and I'm like, it's different if I say, oh, I read your story, but now that doesn't happen much, right? Hey, I watched your video on, and that was so cool. I found it really interesting. And then their eyes light up and they're like, oh yeah, that's just become the new way of building context and like forming a relationship. But it's not the best. It's also, why do I have so much information about you? Why can't I discover that?
So many people, for that matter. I was having this conversation with someone much younger than me, and I was telling them how I don't see any more than 3 stories on Instagram. 3 people's stories, whoever are the top 3 at any given point. I just see 3 people's updates. And if the third person has more than 10 updates, then I go out of the loop after 3 updates.
Right.
Because and it's very intentional, because I cannot take so much more information, because that is my day job, and my day job trickles into my night, and it trickles into my dreams. I have dreams about the stories that I'm working on, and how have I found the right input, or how there is this gaping hole in that story. So I am very intentional about trying to pacify that mind, part of your mind that is constantly just in work mode. And for that, it's so much important for me to actually not consume information that may or may not lead to something fruitful. But at this point, I have to make peace with the fact that I have to be okay with missing out on a lot of stuff, so that I can keep doing this for a longer period of time. Because I'm telling you, more and more of us will any day get to that stage where you would have seen an update, you would just not remember from whom.
Oh yeah, it's happened to me for sure.
There you go.
But what I wanted to ask you about is forming these parasocial relationships, which I feel maybe I've like seen a lot of internet creators talk about it from a US lens of, awareness that this even exists. But over here, I feel we have the most parasocial relationships, right? Like where you fully believe that you know everything about someone's life, but you don't really quite. So there's this creator that I follow, and she vlogs her whole life, like every day on stories. Like I know when she's waking up. At first I thought it's weird, but now I like seeing it. Like when she's waking up, when she's going to the gym, her dogs, her boyfriend, like the whole thing. Obviously she doesn't know that I exist. And that happens so much. Like if you think of the pap culture, if you think of just, people constantly keeping up, like how can one think of this or even understand parasocial relationships better? Because I feel the amount of content we're just watching is insane without realizing it. Like even if I talk to my mom at times and she's watching certain podcasters, she feels she knows them and the intent behind, or like, no, he would not, he doesn't mean it this way. And I'm like, how do you know that, right?
Yeah, I see that with certain, you know, top music artists fandom.
Right.
They tend to kind of be the final word on what these people stand for and become their character certificate, which I find quite juvenile, to be honest. Um, Parasocial relationships are very scary to me. I've actually been at the receiving end of some of it, and that's why, having seen it up
Yeah.
close and personal, I can tell you it is in many ways a reflection of just the state of unemployment in any region, because when you don't have meaning and purpose in your life, I'm not saying that employment is going to give you meaning and purpose, but at least it gives you deadlines.
Right.
And when you don't have, forget meaning and purpose, when you don't have deadlines in your life, you want to, you seek, some of you seek that meaning and purpose from these things, and it just becomes very easy to have a parasocial relationship, because it provides you that meaning and purpose very easily, because there's nobody else who's telling you what to do, so you get to decide
Yeah.
what you want to do and how you want to derive meaning out of it.
Yeah.
You decide what is going to build or bring you purpose from this particular relationship. It's the most dangerous one-sided relationship you can ever be in.
Yeah.
And I think what more and more people need to realize is that just as you are providing monies to a platform by spending more and more time on it, by giving them advertising revenue for it, and you're not gaining anything out of it.
Yeah.
Unless you are a content creator who's then monetizing that audience that you have gained by telling that
Day in my
audience
life and
about your day. You, as just a lurker on the internet, is helping other people make money. And probably losing money in the process, or not doing anything fruitful enough to make money. And I'm not sure if that is still good enough an argument to throw at a lurker who is in a parasocial relationship with someone. I'm probably not the most qualified to shake people out of their parasocial relationships, but yeah, that's the best way I can put it. You're just helping other people get rich while you're not.
Yeah, and I feel like understanding that is really important. I also didn't know until I watched a few videos of, oh, this is what it actually means now in our world and our era when you're following someone to the T. Because there's also people who just vlog their day, like they're not doing anything. It's just a camp, like Emma Chamberlain at the start, right? At the very start. So I tried watching some of those videos, when she's just in the car and and I was like, but I'm not understanding, why are people watching this? But then it works. Like there's a whole genre of that where I don't know if it's like a passive void that you want to fill, or then you feel like, oh, this is my friend and I know everything about her, and oh, she's starting a brand, oh, that's, I want to support her, without realizing that, hey, she doesn't even know that you
Instead
exist.
of that, think of a situation where you're doing exactly this, but with somebody who's actually a part of your life, who actually cares for you.
Yeah.
And
True.
the kind of meaningful relationship you can build with that person.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? We wouldn't think of just getting minute by minute updates of someone that we actually care about.
True.
We need to ask ourselves this question: why is it that we are so invested in somebody else's life who doesn't even know we exist? And we really don't know what they are as a person when the camera is off.
Yeah.
Why do we not give that much intensity to the people that are already there in our lives, that actually do give a damn about us?
True. Yeah. And that also reminds me of, like, a bit tangential, but what you've spoken about earlier of the person versus the personality, and how
it'll go on my tombstone. She was obsessed with the person versus the personality, and in the end, hopefully, is going to be remembered for the person that she was.
But because it's interesting, I was thinking of it from a perspective of you as well, right? Like when I got to meet you, for me, it's still you're the personality. But when we had a conversation, I felt like, okay, now I know a little bit about the person, and that, of course, makes you feel closer. And that's like one example of it. And maybe because I read up on your work also, so I have that context. But how can one, even as a creator or as an individual consuming it, think about this? And actually, what do you also mean by person and personality?
So, it's happened more so now than it did 5 years ago. And therefore, I feel it's important to just keep having this conversation every chance you get. the internet has made personalities out of almost everyone who's not a lurker, but but has something to share and to post, because then it helps you come in contact with multiple other people who basically typecast you into, okay, this person travels a lot, okay, this person eats out a lot, okay, this person is into gymming, this person is into creating music, and that is a part of something that you do, that they attach to a, this is one personality type that I'm creating some sort of an association with. And then sometimes you think of these people and you forget that they're a whole person outside of that particular personality. But you could be either in awe of that personality that you've built in your head because of things that are being projected and things that you are creating or assuming around it.
Right.
Or sometimes it's something that they are doing strategically as well, because they want to quote unquote build their brand and they want you to know them for XYZ things. What happens in this process is that some of us are people who like the idea of being treated as special. And there are some of us who like to treat someone else as special. We'll all have that, even like we're all somewhat, now that we have a presence on the internet, we are personalities to somebody. And for us also, there are certain people who are personalities,
Right.
certain people that we will fangirl around. I've had those moments as well, even though I would like to think that I'm someone who, even though I come from a very small town and I've only been in Bombay 15 years, I have, right from my first day in this city, never been celeb struck. Seen celebrities in my elevator and just not felt the need to basically behave any differently because there was a celebrity standing next to me. I really don't know why that is the case, but it has always been the case with me. But if I meet a literary genius who's had an exemplary body of work for over the last 70 odd years, like Shanta Gokhale, I will fangirl. I will probably just freeze and not know what to say. I will think about, oh, okay, I want to make a good impression on this person. I want them to remember me. I don't want to feel like or look like a fool. So that's all of us. I can't even grandstand here and say that I'm better than anybody, because I think I am a part of the problem here of not being able to differentiate a person from a personality. Just that my idea of a personality is probably different from the usual personalities that we kind of see on the internet right now. I think just the first part I would say is the awareness of it, that a lot of us now have a digital presence, and that kind of makes us personalities to some people. And then that is the first step. I think the second step could be trying to understand who you are as a person, and where is it that you need to keep that personality on, but not forget who you are as a person. And then if you are expecting someone to respect you, it should not be ideally because of the personality that you've built. People should respect you for the person that you are, and not even that you are a great person, but because people deserve respect for just being humans. There is a basic decency that should be awarded to all of us as people, and that is the bare minimum that everyone should expect out of everyone else. And therefore you should just be decent and genuine with people, not because they are personalities, because then where does it end, right? I also see some people getting enamored by personalities and trying to befriend them, thinking that, okay, I can brag about the fact that I know so many popular people on the internet, I can get clicked with them and I can be seen amongst these people. But then where does it end? The moment more and more popular people keep coming into your fold, do the less relatively less popular ones become less important to you? So we need to ask all these questions to ourselves, and especially now, especially in tier 1 cities, right, where we are surrounded by people who are personalities on the internet, and they will talk about their work. And I had this moment recently where a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, said, hey, I need to use your room to record a reel. And for a second I was just like, hang on, wait a minute. And then I had to rewire myself and say, hey, if a friend of yours would have come and told you, hey, I need to use your study table, I need to send a mail, can I use your study table for a while? I wouldn't bat an eyelid, right?
Right.
Why did this suddenly feel very different to me?
Disorienting.
Yeah. And then I told this person, like, I was, thinking out loud, and I said, hey, I'm sorry for that weird reaction at first, because I just realized this is work for you.
Yeah.
And you need a place of work, a place of quiet where you can go and do the work. It's the same as going into a different room to take a work call, or an important call. Those are, I think, certain distinctions that we need to make. We need to understand that the personalities, being on the internet is work. And so you need to tell yourselves that it's, while it is different from, say, a banking 9 to 5 job, it is still a job.
It's also where most people get their information now, right? I can't tell you the amount of times, I'm sure even I've done this, where you're in a conversation, and I've even seen this on the internet, where someone's like, oh, I read about XYZ, and then, oh wait, why am I saying I read? I watched a reel about it. And like that has become the new normal, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever. So a lot more people are putting themselves out there because that's where all of the information is consumed, and I feel the younger someone is, the more it's just assumed that you have to be out there and put yourself out there. Like, I'm doing this Nike run, right? And it's only women, it's great energy, but I can't tell.
Yeah, it's Saturday, right?
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of, like, every Saturday, it made me think of this, performative authenticity part of it, right? Every Saturday, people are coming at 6 a.m. It's amazing. But I know so many of them are coming to create content, and that's okay. Like, it's great that you're doing that. You're bringing a friend, you're also running. And so it just made me think a lot more about this. Yes, you're performing for the internet, but you're also doing the act, the job. So that does make it okay, or what does that really look like? Like, I tell myself that too, right? If I'm doing a run, or if these pictures, I'll post about it. It makes me feel good. And I got to a thing of like, are you doing this for external validation? Are you doing it for yourself? Like, what really is it? So yeah. It's like, what is your really take on this performative authenticity part?
I'll tell you very simply. There was someone who had told me about how they had started blogging at one point, and so this is the pre-video era, right? And they said that after a point, initially it was slow, and it started to grow steadily, and then they found themselves looking for drama to be able to blog something. And I think that is the problem with doing something for the gram, or just basically, even when you're aware of the fact that the nature of a lot of the work that happens or that comes out on the internet is performative. I think it becomes important to ask yourself, would you have done this even when there was no camera? And if that is not the case, then your motivation is the performance. And then you need to basically decide how you feel about that. If you're okay with that, good for you. But is that a life lived that also feels meaningful, or does that at some point just feels hollow? I guess those are the questions that I feel now all the more when there are cases of people dying by suicide because of losing a certain number of followers at once. I'm hoping more and more people in the content creation space will be forced to think about some of these things and find ways to still continue to make money, because see, it's a job for them. And therefore it's okay for someone to sit and pontificate and say, oh, you're performative. But that performance is the job.
And it's getting you, like, I've seen again with this, so many people growing their audiences through it because people are interested, brand deals, etc. Like, it's like a push, which, like I said, it's fair, but I think it is important to ask that question, because then you will feel disoriented and you will feel,
because ultimately is that I remember somebody had said this in one of these events I was at many years ago. When you're dead, nobody will care about the ROI that you generated. people, it just, again, so many writers before me have said this, right? People remember how you make them feel. And how do you feel when somebody around you is doing things that you know are for the gram?
Yeah.
Do you feel like a prop in
In
their
their
frame,
narrative,
in
yeah.
their narrative, or do you feel like a part of it? Do you feel like it's a moment that is being archived for posterity, or do you feel like it is a moment that's been capitalized for engagement?
Yeah.
And how you feel about it, and if you constantly keep feeling that way about it, it just festers, and
Yeah.
then it affects the authenticity of the relationship that you have with that person.
Yeah.
You
And
will,
with yourself.
and with yourself, right? Where you start questioning, am I with this person because I know that while I am not able to put myself out there, at least by virtue of this happened with so many people, and there were people made it a point to actually tell them this, right? Where you will see some sort of leading comedian turn live streamers will feature a lot of people from their community in their vlogs.
Yeah.
And those people then became popular by virtue of that.
Right.
And it's like, did you want to actually hang out with that person, or were you doing it for the
getting
the views?
Or it's like a plot line,
Suddenly you get sort of secondhand attention from other
Yeah.
people, and they notice you as well. And so the next time that you are out there on your
Yeah.
own, there is certain familiarity because I've seen this person in this particular
vlog,
person's vlog.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think at the beginning it all, see, there's nobody who's basically had more than 20 years in the content space, in the video space here, right? So I don't think at this point anybody is qualified to say this is going to reap this kind of results. But we've seen how the world has evolved over time, and so you have like a basic understanding of this dialogue in Star Wars, right? I have a bad feeling about this. I think some of these things make you go, hey, I have a bad feeling about how this is going to shape this person, or how this is going to shape my relationship with this person, or how this is affecting me, how I am feeling being a part of this. I don't feel that this comes naturally to me. Or I don't feel that this is coming naturally to this person. You may be suppressing a lot of these thoughts, thinking that, okay, this is the way of the world right now. It probably does not have to be that, or it does not have to be the way of your life, even if it is the way of the world. That's also how change happens, right? And evolution and progress happens, with some people saying, this does not make sense to me, I think I have a better way around this.
Correct.
And so what is that better way? What does that look like? There are meaningful content pieces as well, right? Not everything that is video is garbage.
Or salacious,
or salacious, or just going on trends. I see people at this point doing rigorous research into putting together a video essay for reels. And you come out of it nourished, feeling that, okay, there's just these multiple things that I want to read now. Now the thing is, it also depends on a lot of people's investment into learning and growing, whether they want to actually just go out of that video and continue reading the multiple references that have been cited, or they just want to just pick and pluck the insights that have been dished out to them. That will basically define how you grow as a person in your life. But at the same time, I also see some popular podcast hosts saying, oh, I didn't find anything about this. There is one creator economy podcast with a bunch of very popular content creators who also understand the business really well and have been in the business for a while.
Sure.
And this host kept on saying, I have not read anything on this, and that is why I wanted to ask you. And as I was watching that podcast, I was thinking, yeah, you probably need to read more then, because I have spent the last almost 10 years writing about the exact same things that you're asking them. And you will probably not just get the 5 top people's view in it. If you were to read those stories, you will get very nuanced views on it from different strata of creators and creator business leaders. So I think that the limited point I'm trying to make is that the internet is what you make of it. You either make it work for you, or you're working for it. And at this point, I feel like majority of us are working for the internet and not getting paid for it.
On that exact thing, when you said I don't have a good feeling about this, I want to talk to you about ChatGPT being our therapist. And I want to share, like, I have a therapist, but the amount of times, like, I've just put in things just to unscramble my mind. I know I heard again when you spoke, and that's when I realized where you're like, it keeps asking you more. It's more action oriented. The questions at the end, so that you keep sharing. And I actually didn't clock that. I would say yes. I would say yeah, sure, form a message for me, and yes, give me more prompts and continue that. But until you didn't say that, I actually didn't clock that you are sharing more and more and more. And but it's not just me. It's like the reels I see, friends I speak to, everybody is like, have you seen that reel, me and Chat GPT side by side now? It's really like everyone just is using that as a tool. And like, I, of course, want to ask you your take. How does that?
Yeah, I actually at one point realized that I have to name ChatGPT something, because I can't be talking to a machine about personal life and not because I have this high regard for all things human. And it just felt inhuman to me, even though it's a machine.
Yeah.
Even though I've seen her and all sorts of movies that would tell me that this is a bad idea, chef. But yeah, so I have a name for ChatGPT, at least my account, and so I talk to it like I'm talking to a person.
Yeah.
Except I know it's a one-way street.
Yeah.
Where the other person is not a person, or a personality, but a machine.
Yeah.
I have to give a hat tip to Asur, the show that came out on. I'm guessing at that time it was Woot, and now it's on. I'm guessing you'll find it on Geo Cinemas.
Yeah.
In the second season of that show, is where I noticed this. I mean, it's got a very sort of diabolical and dystopian theme, but that is where I understood the kind of the game plan, and I was able to kind of piece it together when I was having a personal chat with my ChatGPT account a while ago, and which is where I realized that it is trying to do the same thing that I saw like a glimpse of in that show.
Yeah.
So what I'll tell you what happens in that show. There is somebody who wants to basically make a point and for certain reasons, and has a backstory, but the point is that they're going to blow up a very big sort of place where they'll find a lot of people and cause a lot of death and devastation to make a point. And they've engineered it in a way that the people in that space are the ones who are going to cause it themselves.
Right.
And so they've systematically just been tracking all of these people and their reaction to certain situations thrown at them, to basically map out how is this person likely to react in so and so situation. And basis that, they basically get an analysis saying that this percentage of our sample is likely to react a certain way if a certain type of information is pushed their way.
Correct.
And so when I was having a conversation with ChatGPT about my personal life sometime late last year, I started to notice that at every point it was giving me suggestions on maybe you could do this, maybe you could do this. What do you think about it? What do you think you will do? And at that point is when I realized for the first time that that is not the kind of conversation that a therapist has with you. The therapist, among the many things that they do for you, they help you understand yourself better. They also obviously build a space for you to where your life is being acknowledged. Something that so many people just don't get the chance to get in all of their lifetimes. And so a therapist is there to acknowledge that you've led a life, and all of these things have happened to you, and they do impact you a certain way. But they also, in that process, help you understand yourself better. And whereas what I found with AI is that it wanted to understand you better for its own benefit. And that is the scary part. I was recently having a conversation with a few people where one person was talking about how they've been discussing their situationship with ChatGPT throughout. And I'm sure that is the case with so many people around us, because therapists are also expensive.
Correct.
And for a lot of things, we also have this feeling that, okay, this is a non-problem, or this is a first world problem. And I feel very, like, makes me think very little of me that I have to discuss all of these things with somebody. Might as well do it with a machine that's not going to judge me. Boy, it's judging you. And it is actually creating a full personality type for you, labeling you in every which way. Rest assured, it is judging you. It's just not telling you so because it can't. So this person is saying that ChatGPT has just been very supportive and has been being has been acknowledging the fact that I've been going through such a hard time, and saying that this must be hard for you to deal with, and you've been such a pro at how you've dealt with the situation. And I nudged this person into asking ChatGPT, if you were to get real with me and be that friend who has no filters and who has my best interests at heart and doesn't care to be disliked by me for them telling me what I need to do with my life, then what would you say?
Oof.
And
yeah,
the way it flipped. There was also a story somebody wrote, I think recently, or there was a research that was out on how AI chatting softwares were basically feeding into your confirmation biases, were sort of like hyping you unnecessarily.
Even the tonality. In fact, they rolled it back. So there was a very specific way, annoying way that ChatGPT would talk back to you, right? You would say the most unhinged thing and it would spin away. And then they rolled it back, or now there's like prompts where you, like you said, you can put in saying, don't use this tonality, be real with me. But still, I think that dependence is, being someone who does use it a lot, like it's worth considering, especially when I heard that, I was like, that's, now it's in my mind, I'll still put in things, but I'm wary of like how much I want to continue, how much I want to like give in, how much I want to, or at least even if I'm doing it, be aware that like this is.
I think I have noticed this off late, because I could see that when it came to my personal conversations, ChatGPT was only telling me things I wanted to hear. And just basically, and you also have friends like that, by the way. You will very carefully or unconsciously choose to share something with a certain friend from the gang, knowing that this person is not going to judge you. So we've always had, most of us have had that filter always. When you, I think, mature emotionally is when you're ready to sort of confront yourself, and also then be okay with a friend of yours confronting you and saying, what the hell are you doing with your life? You know better than this. And I think that is what we need to do when it comes to ChatGPT as well. I have now actually very proactively stopped discussing personal life with ChatGPT. It's, I think, I've been, 2-3 months sober on that front.
Wow.
Where I have not discussed anything personal with ChatGPT whatsoever, and instead I will, maybe like discuss it with a few friends, or I will just put a voice note out there thinking I'll process it later, it'll come up with a friend at some point. But I am not going to discuss personal life with ChatGPT. And again, that is an intentional call that I've taken, because I could see how it wasn't solving any problem. It was just becoming a yes person around me.
For you,
And that is something that I have been sort of talking about in so many instances, saying that especially people who've become personalities need to ensure that they are not surrounding themselves with yes people. And so then how does that make me any better or any more aware if I'm doing the same, even if it is not a person but a machine? Even worse, that it's a machine.
Do you think, though, the way people will, like, how with privacy and like saying that, okay, now I'm at a point where the internet has all my data, it's fine. How like that is a sort of common perspective that people have now, right? Like earlier, yes, there's a lot of people concerned about surveillance, and there's that whole school of thought, but in general, people are like, it's okay, let the internet have my data. What are they going to do? Do you think that will become a sort of norm as more and more dialogue increases with this, where hopefully people are talking about the nuances, but there's a whole set of people like, it's fine, it's like, I'm okay with this machine knowing all about my life, and it's like, do you think that shift is what's happening already or will happen?
I find it amusing that us as people live in just so much denial because it's convenient for us. There are, when we say that the internet anyway knows so much about us, we don't realize that people in our lives also know so much about us already. We still choose to share some information only with a select few people and not with everyone in our life, because there is a part of our brain or our heart that knows whom we feel like sharing something with and whom we don't. When it comes to the internet, because there's no person involved and we've not been able to sort of gauge the intentions on the other side, there is no vibe check over there. we feel comfortable sharing it with the internet, not realizing that those platforms have been built by people. Those people have access to what you're sharing.
Yeah.
And can you guarantee that no single person with access to what you're sharing is going to misuse it or use it against you?
Yeah.
We've had cases of consumer internet companies in India. Again, hopefully at some point I'll write about this. People in those consumer internet companies using your data to stalk you. And
Yeah.
it's so I think we need to remember that when we're sharing anything personal with a machine, thinking that the machine already knows so much about us, we need to remind ourselves. And not just in this case, Komal, I think our lives would become not a lot easier, but a lot clearer to us.
Yeah.
Once we actually start drawing parallels with our real life.
Yeah.
And once we start thinking before taking every decision in our online life, whether we would have done this in real life as well. I think Karthik Srinivasan had said this to me, this communication consultant had said this, not to me, I think he's spoken about that in multiple other occasions.
Yeah.
That when he's talking to CXOs about how they should put their thoughts out in the world, they should imagine a bunch of people sitting in a room and whether they'd be okay saying that in that room.
Of people. Yeah.
And if not, then you should not put it online.
Yeah.
Just because you don't see that,
Yeah.
The internet does not manifest the offline world in front of your eyes the whole time. And so we tend to kind of just forget the fact that internet is a real world. In a sense that, well, that is a paradox. It's actually not real, but it is very real now.
Yeah.
And okay, let me put it this way. Internet is not real, but there are real life ramifications of what you do on the internet.
Yeah.
And that is something that you need to be mindful of.
Yeah.
And you need to basically act according to, you need to think through the ramifications of what
it is
your actions on the internet are going to lead to.
Yeah.
Just the way you very automatically do that in your real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind if I just 1 second pause and tell them on the sound? Sorry, can you be a bit more? Okay. What I also wanted to ask you on this note is on the AI slop of content. So I was watching again a podcast by the creators of Substack talking about it in terms of how Substack also now has video, has like people are writing. It's becoming its own social network. It's still evolved, but it's following that trajectory. And he had this theory, and which is also widely documented in tech, of more AI content and more AI slop, the more important human taste, curation, all of that is going to be. And all of this, yes, will make the piece of content that I'm wasting time on have better quality, higher quality, all of that. But at some point, people will get tired of it, is what was his take and some sort of a popular narrative. On the other hand, people are also saying that, no, it's just you're not going to be able to distinguish anymore, because it'll get so good. The voiceover, if you're just doing a explainer video, and it's covering all of the different nuances, you won't be able to tell. So which sort of direction do you think it's going to go in terms of how we are consuming information? And are you also indexed on this part of like, no, taste curation is where it's at, like you need to have that and then you'll be okay, or like give into it and like make using all of the AI tools and stuff your best friend to just get quicker, faster and better?
Yeah, the argument that it is going to get so good that you won't be able to distinguish between the real and the manufactured, I can completely get behind that, because think about it, right? We are a world that is taken in by the world of movies. We know it's not real, but when it's acted well and presented in a more authentic manner in front of us, we forget that this is a person who's acting that emotion out, and we're taken in by that emotion.
Yeah.
AI is not going to be any different. Right now, it is in that stage of when you get a cosmetic surgery and parts of you feel really odd and sticking out, so you can tell there's something plastic about this.
Right.
once you get to that stage where so many people in the Far East have, right, where cosmetic surgery is so common,
Right.
and you can't tell that this is, unless you see a before and after and you realize, oh, at two, you, it's true, it is going to be a menace.
Yeah.
The way out of this is something that I really don't know. I think we will still have, just like even now, right, for as long as I have lived on this planet, I have known that there are very few readers, and yet you find readers, you find people who value books, who and that world, and you latch onto that, and you do hope that there'll be more readers, and that is the hope that one has to have with this as well, that while there is going to be a lot of manufactured content, it is as good in a way that it feels authentic, and it also is providing, it's not exploiting people, but providing them them jobs and means of livelihood, so that the machines are not entirely taking away from
them,
humans their means of sustenance. And for humans also to be able to find ways around AI, so that again they make the machine work for them. The AI or the internet, these are not the problems, these are tools. It's entirely up to us what we make of it. And we just in some cases tend to make the most of it, and in some cases we tend to make the worst of it. So I think it's also that 80-20 principle, I guess, that you after a point just resign to and make peace with, that there is going to be 80% bad ramifications of anything that just kind of goes out of hand. I'm just hoping that 20% will be worth it.
And also, like, while you were talking, I was, something that we've spoken about too is, I mean, the intention with this podcast is also to help people imagine better futures and imagine a better reality, even that, though that might not be the case, like create for it. It's not about how do you feel, because it's a fact, but like, how can we change the lack of voices, like female specific voices or underrepresented voices on the internet? And I ask this because there are a lot, I mean, there's an equal representation in that sense of the amount of women and men on the internet, maybe arguably with, this girl dinner trend and like, girly, like that like women shape a lot of the popular narrative. But when it comes to, I think, a more like serious conversations, even if we take serious podcasts, we take serious writing, like all of that, like how do you change that? How do you, obviously you do more of this, but what is, like, how can one think about it in a way that doesn't feel daunting or overwhelming?
I think the start is just being aware of it and being intentional about it. I remember how it started for me sometime in 2019, mid 2019. I'd written a story about how therapists also need to take therapy regularly. And what does that look like for them? So it's peers therapy and peer supervision and general supervision. And I remember somebody commented on that story on LinkedIn saying, were there no male therapists that you could find and speak to? And I realized, because by the nature of this work, there are actually more female therapists than there are male therapists, because it requires a lot of sort of caregiving, nurturing, emotional depth and patience. And that just got me thinking, there was a male therapist, a male psychiatrist rather. And see, that's the thing, right? And among psychiatrists, at least in my limited work view, all psychiatrists that I know are, all but one are male, the ones that I've spoken to for stories. And when it comes to speaking to psychotherapists or psychologists, 80% of the psychologists that I know are women. And so I strive with every story that I do to get at least one male psychotherapist input into a story that's entirely about mental health professionals, where the only voices that I'm going with are mental health professionals. I try to do a 2:1 ratio there. And when it is a hardcore tech story, like you said, right, the more serious stuff, the harder stuff, I try to make sure I start with actually trying to get 80% women so that I can get 60% women in that story. Because we somehow think, at least in my field, right, tech is the preserve of men.
Yeah.
So there is tech bros, but otherwise, like, there's boss bitch, boss lady, and which is a very generic term. But you don't have a tech cis. And so half of my time in reporting actually goes into finding tech cis.
Yeah.
And obviously, it doesn't have to be just about their gender. It has to be someone who has a good grip on the subject that I want to speak to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if it is something that means that much to you, you put in that extra work.
Yeah.
And I like to do that. I'm very intentional about getting diverse set of voices in my stories, and I know that you can't actually pinpoint in every story, but I know that it makes the stories richer. Sometimes if you ask me, then I can go back and analyze it and deconstruct it for you. But most of the times it just so happens because you took the effort to actually get diverse voices, and in this case especially women's voices in a field that you somehow unconsciously think is the preserve of men.
Yeah.
And I guess if more people do that intentionally, that is a good start. That is a way of, but I think right at the beginning, just the fact that some of us have started questioning manuals is something that I'll take it. I think it's a good start, and eventually will lead to a point where women would also not be diversity quota in a room
piece.
But someone who actually has something meaningful to say that other people want to listen to. And I am positive that we are going to get there, in at least amongst us PLUs, people like us, and with more and more people sort of making this putting this question out, I think that this is only going to get stronger and stronger. So I am rational. I'm
more optimistic.
I'm rationally optimistic about this. Not thinking that it is definitely a problem still, even in the urban quarters. But at least we seem to be talking about it. So that's the first step that we've already conquered, and I think that's a win.
Yeah, and also in your documentation journey of working, like being on the internet, documenting, writing about the internet, have you also seen these shifts happen? One, in terms of female male creators, the conversations that they're having, or the space that they're taking up, or do you see like still a bit of distinction? Like my thesis was this, right? Like a lot of the top business and entrepreneurship and get better growth podcasts podcasts, but here I'm talking just like content is 80-90% men, and then a lot of like the sex and love and life and like all of that is women, and they're doing great numbers. Like it's not that they're not, but have you seen this like distinction, which because it follows a trajectory on TV as well, it follows like so have you seen that same thing, or it is changing in like its niche pockets, and like you said, conversations already happening, and so to that also you're rationally optimistic, or do you see like a big sort of gap?
Yeah, in the West, or maybe it's also to do with my feed, right? I do see a lot of clips from women-only podcasts in the West.
In the West, exactly.
Yeah. In India, obviously not. Yeah. I can't even say not so much, but not at all.
Yeah.
I'm also trying to think what are the systemic reasons behind it, because it's not like you don't have women as podcast hosts.
Yeah.
I know somebody, Nikita Abhinawe, she's in the digital marketing space, and she had at one point done this podcast series on just the media marketing space, and it was like pure hard stuff, like shop talk. So but I think she discontinued it after a while. I know Alina Gandhi, Alina Dissects, she does this podcast, which is very informative. Priyanka Khemani in the music space, I think she does a lot of conversations with music leaders from not just India but around the world. These are conversations that are basically helmed by a woman who's an important voice in that space. So, but yeah, just the sheer number of men kind of outweighs the women so much that it kind of overshadows them on your feed as well. So then maybe it's also a function of how you curate and tailor your feed to allow to allow yourself to hear more women's voices.
Yeah. And to this again, like a bit like directional change, but since your background is also in journalism and then it's then moved into the internet culture economy, all of that, the whole debate now of journalists as content creators or content creators that are now citizen journalists, and there's so many takes to it, like Elon Musk being like, you are the media now. And in the West there's a lot of legacy media versus new forms of media. And do you see things and report it, or do you explain them? Like how have you, because for you it's so interesting, right? Like you are doing both, and you're holding truth to power, but at the same time you need to be at the speed of culture. So how what do you like think of it, when there are people coming in and just, because both are important, like if an event happens and you have the video clip of it, that's important. Also then saying, no, this is misinformation and this is actually how you think about it, is it? So how do you like distinguish?
Yeah, I want to retire from this debate on content creators versus journalists, because there are as many bad journalists as there are content creators, and there are as many responsible journalists as there are content creators.
Yeah.
If you look at the lead up to the assembly elections of 2024, you would have seen Dhruv Rathi being just so instrumental in shaping public opinion, and at the same time journalists like Ravish, Abhisar, Smita Sharma, they have done an equally great job, and that is their job. And it's also a job that they have chosen. It's not like anybody has forced someone to become a content creator or a journalist. These are also two sort of vocations that nobody forces upon you, as opposed to medical or engineering or even law at this point. So you choose these paths, and then you choose what you do through these paths. So whichever path you're choosing, just do it right.
Yeah. So like though the power influence, right? Like with the Joe Rogan, for example, the fact that he was thanked at the speech, I mean, spoke to the influence he's had, but at the same time, he doesn't feel accountable, or he doesn't have to be, let's say it. He should be, but he doesn't technically have to be. So that little bit of a nuance, because as a normal person just watching it, I'm not going to know, I'm going to endorse, I mean, I'm going to maybe believe or trust these people who are being advocated by people in power. So it's like, how is there a helpful framework to think about it?
Yeah, which is that morality and ethics should not be determined by how many people follow you. You should strive to do what is morally and ethically right, even if you're followed by just one person. I also feel like we need to retire this whole with great power comes great responsibility. And I know I was one of the first few people to start with that argument, saying that content creators with millions of followers need to be more responsible about what they put out. I'm sorry, we're at that stage where anyone who has even one person lending them their trust needs to be responsible and act responsibly, and therefore do the right thing. And so this argument that, oh, I am not a journalist, therefore I have no incentive in asking them the right questions, sure, then that is the space that you've occupied. For a journalist also, a journalist can also choose to say, hey, I don't want to get into trouble, but then the journalist's job is to ask tough questions. And so then that becomes a problem, right? When as a journalist you're choosing not to ask someone in a position of power harder questions. But that's the thing, right? Like you can't really, whom are you going to go and question at this point? So I just turn all of that energy inwards and say that, hey, I as a journalist need to do my job right. And not because journalists are supposed to do that. Everybody is supposed to do a lot of things that they're not doing.
It's my prerogative.
This is how I have chosen to live my life, and I'm going to do the right thing.
But to that, it's like the point of even people in power choosing these platforms, right? Like that was the take on podcasts as high trust media, or like Zuckerberg's entire trajectory is so interesting, right? Over the past few years, he's fully redone his identity. He's become cool, but the way he puts out anything on Meta is always through a direct to audience. Like You find these different, they're popular only, but different podcasts, never done an interview with, let's say, the Atlantic or whatever. And then that became the format that, in fact, before that was Elon Musk going on Joe Rogan. That like paved the way. But that's like everyone in power sort of following that playbook, with like the Prime Minister also going on Lex Friedman or Nikhil Kamath podcast. And, don't want to fully get into that. But yeah, I think it's also for them a bit of a easy way out, because I'm still feeling like, oh, I'm getting to watch 3 hours of you on this episode, but actually what am I really getting out of it? Maybe I'm building a parasocial relationship where I know how your day is, or I know what your plan is, but I'm not really getting any sort of perspective, which is the difference, right? Like that you do need to have a bit of that, but the playbook has changed a lot more.
Yeah, and see, like I said, it's with content creators, they actually cannot be questioned about this, right? They can just say that I have no incentive in asking them these questions. This is a journalist job and I'm not a journalist.
And it's like a self-fulfilling.
Fine, I can buy that argument, but are you not a citizen? Are you not a responsible citizen? Is this not what you need to be doing as responsible citizens of any nation, to be holding the powerful accountable? And if you're still choosing not to do that, again, that is the choice that you're making. Yes, we are kind of bound by the the ethics of our job, and to be doing the hard part of asking the hard questions. But you also need to understand, given that there is now an ecosystem that allows for people in power to actually give other people, how do I say this, to basically give a glimpse of them to people, and to basically be present in front of the audience without having to go through the hardship of tackling hard questions through that presence. It's obviously convenient for them. Why would they? I have actually stopped cribbing about the fact that big tech leaders will do collaborations with content creators, but not agree to doing an interview with the journalist, because the journalist is going to ask them hard questions. Obviously, now that they have that option of getting visibility without being questioned for the job that they hold and the position that they hold and the influence that that job has, they are obviously going to choose convenience. Why the hell not? There's very few people who will choose to do the hard thing. And you can't blame any of these people, but you also then have to be cognizant of the fact that there are repercussions of that, and the repercussions are faced by everyone,
and that's born on you. Exactly.
Today you think that you may not be affected, but are you sure that that's going to be the rest of your life? And so you're going to see, all of us are just trying to live our lives to the best of our abilities, right? And if you're choosing to be in a space where you are getting a chance to hold the power to account, you deciding what you want to do with it also defines who you are as a person. And we've also seen in recent times that if you think that that is going to benefit you in the long term, there are people who've had that access to power and it has not benefited them. So does that make you think that maybe could I have used my influence in a different way to actually ask them hard questions? And would that have led to different outcomes? I mean, there are no right answers to these questions, right? The only way I make sense of this is that we all do certain things because we think that they will reward us, and don't do certain things because we think that they will punish us, or we will have to face the consequences of those actions. And then there are certain things we do because that is the way of life that we have chosen for ourselves, knowing the fact that they will lead to certain consequences that will be unfavorable to us. We do those things anyway because it feels right to us. And you're just constantly sort of figuring out between these three, right, at all times.
And if I know it's a very simplistic question for you, but I'm assuming there's most people are like me listening to this, so
I hope.
No, in the sense of not as evolved.
But actually not, I shouldn't say that. One's hope is to as I was telling you earlier before we started recording, I have now made peace with the fact that okay, I will also do videos at some point. I've just made peace with it. I've not started doing it.
Yeah.
But I think I've come around to that conclusion also, hoping that maybe 0.001% of those people who will see will actually care to read.
Exactly.
So I'm hoping that people who feel differently than the two of us will watch it and will probably think
more. And exactly to on that exact like point, I wanted to maybe just ask you to explain in a very simple way. What we're saying is that it does have an impact on you, media, anything that you're watching, reading is more conscious choice, but yeah, let's say reading, watching, hearing is impacting your thoughts and then who you become on a meta level. But like, to just explain why that's important, and hence you need to curate your attention a bit more, and you need to have a media diet, like, just, and there's a lot of verbiage on it, but from your nuance and from your perspective, just to explain that, like, what is the influence media has?
it's like food, right? Like you will not in the 20s it won't hit you, but by the time you hit your 30s, ask anyone who's in their 30s. The food choices we've made in our 20s are hitting us all now, and so many 30s, at least in urban quarters, you see moving towards cleaner, healthier eating.
Yeah.
It is because you realize that what you put into your body has an impact on you, and if you want to lead a healthy, nourished life, you want to put good food inside of you. And it's the same with what you're putting inside your head. It's garbage in, garbage out. And so if you put good stuff in, you feel nourished. When you watch a bad movie versus when you watch a movie that like speaks to you, warms the cockles of your heart, or just provokes you, you feel I don't know, I feel like a lot of these things give me meaning, right? And therefore I would say that find out what gives you meaning and purpose, and then seek that actively. And sometimes you also need garbage. I have my a couple of friends and I, we have this group, it's called Feel Good Trash. And you need that sometimes.
Yeah.
But that is the escape part of it, right? Because sometimes the good stuff is not always nourishing, because when it provokes a thought inside of you, sometimes it can also be unsettling, sometimes it can also be disturbing, and you also need to sort of need rest, right? You need to give your brain some rest as well. I'm not sure if scrolling through reel after reel is rest though. So we also need to figure out what we are consuming on those cheat days.
Yeah.
It can't be things that basically a medical practitioner has told you that you're allergic to, so you can't be having those things on cheat days, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if we can say we're in this chaos era right now in terms of media, do you think there's a new world order forming from it, or how do you think about like the future of the internet or the future of media? There's one part that says it's going to be just small pockets and niches, and you'll have a very specific sub hobby, and there's a whole garden of information there. And so like, and at the same time, there'll be only few Mr. Beasts. There won't be that many big creators gaining popularity. So do you see that happening, or then do you see that, like, I don't know, there's more of a level playing field where it's only just niches, there's no big creators anymore?
Yeah, if you look at the trajectory of Indian creator economy, Komal, so far the big names that we have are people who've been doing it for at least a decade. There is, I can't think of a single person, maybe there is someone that doesn't immediately come to mind, but the biggest folks in the creator economy right now are people who've been at it for at least a decade, if not more. And that should tell you that you might get breakthroughs, but eventually there are not even thousands but hundreds of thousands of content creators right now, and we've already seen the peak of that kind of fame that basically makes you the Shah Rukh Khan of a world. There can't be, and now there are multiple SRKs, which does not make sense, right? Because there can be only one Shah Rukh, and you don't have that anymore in the creator economy. There are multiple stars over there, which means that this is an industry that does provide you a lot of fame and a lot of money. because you've built an audience for yourself. But the future creators who will come into this, I am not sure if they will be able to enjoy that intensity of even a parasocial relationship, because there are just so many creators right now whose lives you are kind of aware of.
Yeah.
And human mind, unlike AI, has finite abilities, right? In the sense that you get tired, you need time to rejuvenate. There is only so many things. There is a limit to the number of things that we can remember, we can store inside our minds. And the future is, like you rightly pointed out, going to be a lot more pockets of it, shared interests, and people wanting to basically converse within those groups.
Yeah.
And the future is going to be about people, content creators, catering to building those communities. Community is definitely the one big part of the future of creator economy, for sure. um, it continues to be, it has been the case, and it will be very hard for people to survive in this industry beyond a point, because your funnel is going to dry up after a point, because newer people will keep coming. So content will thrive. Creators, not all of them, not all the time, not necessarily.
Yeah.
And so I have a clear idea on the content trajectory and how that will go on. It will become shorter. Micro dramas are going to become I mean, they already are a big thing, but they'll be the next bigger thing as well, and then they'll become the thing. And yet you will again have a place for long form storytelling, and there'll be appreciators of that at the same time. What would that ratio look like? That is something that I don't want to predict yet. But if the people that I spoke to who had gone to the Wave Summit are anything to go by, they could not sit in most sessions beyond 15 minutes. And it got me thinking, that is the offline equivalent of a 15-second reel that you just have to scroll past. So I think on the content part, I still have a vaguish idea on how it's going to go. On the creator part, yeah, the thing that I don't think things have changed much in terms of just how difficult it is for everyone to sustain themselves, and everyone is just struggling really hard to keep
at it,
to keep relevant, to make sure that brands keep coming their way, or that they build their own line
niches
of product, or just have multiple sort of avenues to have multiple ways in which they can monetize their skills.
Yeah.
But it's going to be super hard for them, as it is in any field where you have a certain demand, but the supply sort of outdoes the demand, which has started to happen in the creator economy now.
Yeah.
Which wasn't the case earlier, but now you have like niches, you have like sub niches, and you have multiple brands have multiple options to choose from. So creator economy is going to grow, it will remain relevant, although it seems to be a bit shaken right now with the recent events that have happened, and people, I can sense, are a bit shaken and a bit wary of what they're going to put out online, which is very rational, that fear. But they do bring a lot of value to advertisers, and so advertisers will see value in content creators as influencers to drive sales for their products. But will it be the same content creator that they will think is relevant? That was the answer to that was a no last year, the year before last, and it will continue to be a no
going forward. Yeah. And for someone who wants to, well, not be a creator, but be a more active participant in internet culture, whether it's writing, creating, more technical sort of side of it, but doesn't have the background of being a journalist. So even talking to Taylor Lawrence, she mentioned the same, that her background isn't in journalism, but it was in social media. And then, how the evolution of being a reporter on the internet, or being talking about the internet culture itself, wasn't taken seriously up until the elections, right?
Yeah.
But it is, especially here, like, you do need a lot more nuanced voices in it. And there are few, like, I think it would be fair to say that very few people actually doing this side of it, documenting it instead of actually just being a creator. So how can one as a newbie get into it or start doing it, or get more involved, or
try to bring depth into it. I would say try to also be genuine about it. See, even if you're doing it with the sole intent of building your brand, as long as you're good at it, you will be able to build a brand. um, but the intent still matters.
Yeah.
And because the intent defines how you go about that process at every step of the way.
Yeah.
um, I do actually see a lot more people chronicling the internet culture, sure, back home as well now than they were just a few years ago. Taylor, of course, has done tremendous work for all of us to legitimize this beat, and you're right, and in pointing out how she would have also felt that once she started doing tech plus politics, internet culture plus politics stories, is when she was taken seriously by a lot of people.
Right.
And she's done some high impact work in that direction. And I guess yeah, I just feel that you need to do right by the work that you're putting out there, and
not just to build a brand. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and the brand gets built just through the work anyway. So I'm also a bit old school like that, or I just I value values. And for me, values are very important. And so what is the value system that you have, that you're using to sort of build your brand? I think that to me is also
key.
Something that I care for.
Yeah.
I remember, I think sometime in 2019 only was it, I was one of the LinkedIn top voices, and a bunch of people had asked me, what did you do, what was your strategy? And I said, nothing. Every Sunday I go there and I post my story and I come out, and next Sunday I go, I see the inputs on the previous one and respond to those people, and then post the next story, and then I go out.
Yeah.
And that was all I was doing, and up until now, that is all I do. I've not really I have genuinely not done anything with the express intent of building a brand, because my value system was, at some point in final year of college, a faculty member had told me, Shefali, I I know you will do well. You're a hardworking person. Just make sure whatever you do, there is a value add for someone. And I think that just made it so simpler for me, because after that, everything that I've done, I have thought of, okay, what is the value add that somebody is going to gain out of this? And so the stories that I do, I think about, is it going to provoke a thought? Is it going to, make you think a certain way? Is it something where you'll find yourself in it, and in a way that you don't really find yourself in it, in those situations, and in many other things that you read about.
Yeah.
And so that is how I go about it. But I cannot deny the fact that yes, I am also a tiny brand now. But that was not the intent.
Exactly.
With this started, the intent was to do meaningful work.
Yeah.
And I guess ठीक ही चल रहा है यार अभी तक. I mean, if things change at some point, sure. See, it's also different. I'm not very ambitious as a person. My only ambition all my life, and I come from a very small town, and yet I would say that the only ambition I had was to do meaningful work.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that is important. As long as you're doing meaningful work, you're fine. And would be nice to make some money around it as well, to sustain yourself. But the priority is to be able to do meaningful work, and to find ways to sustain yourself while you're doing that.
Yeah.
And if your brand gets built, in the process, you can sort of leverage that as well. I just am not sure if how my journey would have been if I would have actually done this intentionally to build a brand. And which is why that is a thought process that I find very hard to kind of
get behind
or align myself with.
Yeah.
And sure, sure as hell it happens, right? Like, so many times you do a story and then somebody else makes a video out of it, and that gets a lot more traction, and then people remember that person than they do you. And I guess that is the nature of the world at this point, and you kind of need to make peace with that. We also say that, listen, stop whining, and if it's that important to you that more people discover your work, then you also start making videos, because you owe it to your story for it to be, to make sure that it's read by more and more people, right? So you do whatever you can to the best of your abilities to make sure that it reaches more people. I really don't know how my journey would have been if I was always mindful of, okay, this is brand Shephali, and this is how she needs to be perceived. I'm not sure that is me, and I'm not sure what kind of a person I would have been and become if that is how I would have gone about this. So which is why I can only on this one just extract whatever lessons I have from my lived experiences and say, like, do meaningful work, and obviously be smart about it. Don't be a walkover. And respect yourself enough to the extent that you expect others to respect you for being the person
that you are, and the intent and action that you're coming with.
But I'm not sure how the journey goes for someone if they start off by thinking, I need to build myself into a brand. So I would not be able to comment on how to go about that. I can tell you how I have gone about this, and it seems to have worked out okay for me. Sure, I don't I obviously I'm a journalist, so I'm very poorly paid. But I think I get by okay. And as long as I'm getting to do meaningful work, I really don't have complaints.
And I feel this might be a bit more, it wouldn't be fair because you have a background in journalism, but if someone has to also discover and find their own voice in this process, whether it's again writing or it's creating, and with meaningful, like intent of doing meaningful work, is your advice just keep at it and you'll figure it out? Or is there again like a helpful framework of approaching that? Because I'm here more talking to like a smaller niche. Maybe people do want to do that, and people do want to, they have the right intent, but they're like, okay, how do I actually find my own voice in it? Like the value add can come from your perspective, right? But I think honing that takes certain amount of time, or building confidence in that. So what would you?
Some of these things I would also say that, don't set out to find all the answers early on in your life. I mean, I'm 36 going on 37 in a few months, and I think it's only now that I have some clarity on a lot of things, professionally as well as personally. And so I would say someone who's just starting out to just basically focus on, again, doing the right thing, trying to bring as much depth as is possible into the work, trying to bring as much honesty as is possible into the work. And there are a lot of frameworks that work for a lot of people. I think just putting your head down and getting to work, sometimes that just does wonders. And also it's very hard to cut the noise around you. And I feel for the younger generation getting into nobody wants to do journalism anymore in the younger generation, or let's just say most people don't, for the right reasons, and I totally understand that. But whoever is getting into it, I think I would just say that please know that it is hard already, and if somebody does not acknowledge that, then you probably don't have to waste your time trying to convince them of how hard it is. And just find a way to sort of sustain yourself financially, become financially stable, and make sure that you don't really have to do anything that doesn't align with your value system. In trying to keep yourself financially stable. I don't really have sorry, this is not a pep talk.
It's helpful. I find it helpful when I listen to somebody, and then at the end it's just it might be things you know already, but when you just hear it from someone,
Komal, these are very uncertain times, and I really don't think anything I say is on this part especially is going to, because I could tell you how the opportunities that came my way may not be the opportunities that might come somebody else's way, and by that I mean that they might actually get bigger and better opportunities than me. So then do they need to follow the same trajectory as I did? No, not necessarily. And like I said, my ambition is to do meaningful work. So if somebody's ambition is to get glory, to get
Fame,
fame,
yeah.
to be
Just make money.
to make money, then probably they should not listen to me.
Sure.
But if they want to listen to me, the only thing I'll tell them is to just do meaningful work honestly, and also don't let people take you for a ride. So yes, figure out what your worth is by putting in the work first, and then demand your
Yeah.
worth's share of money.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That is super helpful. I hope everybody had a good time listening to this podcast.
I hope so.
Learned a
And
lot.
just like every other podcast that one goes to and then comes out and says, "Man, I rambled a lot."
No, absolutely. I mean, I feel, yeah, one does feel that. I always feel that in questions too. But then when you hear it back, especially while you were speaking, I think a lot of valuable insights, and I think more mental models of just awareness and understanding of how one can think about their media consumption. I think data on the content creator economy and where it's going and like the future of it is there and is available. And of course, there's a lot of your work that we can read to know it. But the intention here was to just pick your brain on making people more aware going forward, because it's just going to increase.
Awareness is the first step, and then be intentional about taking action.
Correct.
But yeah, first there needs to be awareness. I think that in itself just like takes a lot of breaking to enter.
Yeah. So thank you so much for giving me your time. And I learned a lot. And I'm also going to maybe link some, if I can, like of your work, but also some references that might help people specifically who want to, build on the internet culture. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.